Sophie Taylor always believed that the most important lessons were taught after the school bell rang. On a crisp autumn afternoon, with maple leaves swirling across the academy courtyard, she had no idea that the quiet, unassuming father who barely spoke during parent-teacher meetings was studying more than just his daughter's academic progress. He was studying Sophie's heart. "Emma, try again." "What's 12 times 8? Sophie encouraged, her auburn hair falling across her face as she leaned over the 10-year-old's homework. Emma Kensington scrunched her nose. 96. Perfect, see? I knew you could do it, Sophie exclaimed, giving the young girl a high five. The afternoon light streamed through the large windows of the small classroom where Sophie ran her after-school tutoring program. "Miss Taylor, why do we need to learn multiplication anyway?" Emma sighed dramatically, causing Sophie to laugh. "Because one day you might need to calculate how many cookies to bake for a very important party," Sophie replied, her green eyes twinkling. The classroom door opened quietly, and Sophie looked up to see Emma's father standing there, as punctual as always. Ryan Kensington was a man of few words, dressed in simple, well-tailored clothes that somehow never seemed to wrinkle. His dark hair was neatly trimmed, and his eyes, a deep, thoughtful blue, always seemed to be analyzing something just beyond what everyone else could see. "Daddy." Emma jumped up, gathering her books. "I got all my multiplication tables right today." A hint of a smile crossed Ryan's face. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." His voice was deep and measured, every word seemingly chosen with care. He nodded politely to Sophie. "Thank you, Miss Taylor." "It's always a pleasure, Mr. Kensington. Emma is making excellent progress." Sophie smiled, but as always, felt slightly uncomfortable under his intense gaze. He wasn't unfriendly, just reserved to the point of being enigmatic. As they left, Sophie couldn't help but wonder about them. Emma had mentioned her mother had passed away 3 years ago, but beyond that, the Kensingtons remained a mystery. Mr. Kensington always paid the tutoring fees promptly, never questioned the rates, and drove a modest car that seemed at odds with the exclusive private academy his daughter attended. That evening, Sophie returned to her small apartment, tossing her keys onto the counter before collapsing onto her worn sofa. Teaching full-time at Westfield Academy and running the after-school tutoring program was exhausting but fulfilling. At 28, she had built a life she was proud of. Even if her bank account didn't always reflect her dedication, her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Lily. "Blind date still on for Friday," Sophie groaned. Her dating life had been a series of disappointments, and blind dates were the worst, but she had promised Lily. "Unfortunately, yes, but you owe me." The next day, Sophie arrived early at Westfield to prepare for her 6th-grade English class. As she walked through the marble hallway, she nearly collided with Ryan Kensington. "Mr. Kensington, I'm so sorry," she apologized, clutching her coffee cup to avoid spilling. "No apologies needed, Miss Taylor." His eyes met hers briefly before glancing at the stack of papers she was balancing. "Those look heavy. May I help?" The offer surprised her. "Oh, thank you, but I've got it." He nodded, then hesitated. "Miss Taylor, I was hoping to discuss Emma's progress in more detail. Would you have time after your tutoring session today?" "Of course," Sophie replied, curious about this unexpected request. "Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. I just want to ensure I'm supporting her learning at home." There was something almost vulnerable in the way he said it, so different from his usual composed demeanor. The school day passed in a blur of literature discussions and grammar lessons. By the time tutoring began, Sophie found herself unusually aware of the ticking clock. Emma arrived with 2 other students, chattering about a science project. "Dad said he's coming in to talk to you," Emma informed her, pulling out her math homework. "He never talks to anyone." Sophie raised an eyebrow. "Never?" Emma shook her head solemnly. "Not since Mom died. He works all the time. Sometimes I think he forgets how to talk to grown-ups." The comment stuck with Sophie throughout the session. When the other students had been picked up and Emma was working on her last problem, Ryan Kensington arrived. He sat quietly in the back of the classroom, watching his daughter work with an expression of quiet pride. When Emma finished, Sophie gave her a children's novel to read while she and Mr. Kensington talked. "Emma's doing wonderfully," Sophie began, sitting across from him at one of the small tables. "Her multiplication skills have improved significantly, and she has a natural talent for storytelling." Ryan nodded, his fingers lightly tapping the table, the first sign of nervousness she'd ever seen from him. "That's good to hear. I worry about her. Since her mother passed, I've tried to be everything for her, but—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable with having shared even that much. "Mr. Kensington, Emma is a happy, well-adjusted child. Whatever you're doing, it's working," Sophie assured him. He looked up, meeting her eyes directly for what felt like the first time. "Please call me Ryan." "Ryan," she repeated, feeling strangely formal. "I'm Sophie." He smiled, then a real smile that transformed his serious face completely. "Sophie, Emma talks about you constantly. You've made quite an impression on her." Sophie felt a flush creep into her cheeks. "She's a wonderful student." Their conversation continued, Ryan slowly opening up about Emma's interests at home, her struggle with math anxiety, and how he'd been trying to help. Sophie found herself drawn to his obvious devotion to his daughter and his thoughtful, measured way of speaking. As they were wrapping up, Ryan cleared his throat. "I was wondering if you might consider additional tutoring sessions for Emma at our home, perhaps once or twice a week. I'd compensate you accordingly, of course." The request wasn't unusual. Sophie tutored several students privately, but something about the way Ryan asked made it feel different. "I could do Tuesday and Thursday evenings," she offered. "My last tutoring session ends at 5:30. Perfect. Would 6:30 work?" "I can have dinner prepared for you and Emma." He handed her a card with an address. "We live just outside the city." Sophie accepted the card, surprised by the gesture. "That's very kind, but not necessary. I insist. It's the least I can do." When Friday arrived, Sophie found herself distracted throughout the day, her thoughts drifting to her conversation with Ryan. There was something compelling about him, a depth beneath his quiet exterior that intrigued her. By evening, she had almost forgotten about her blind date until Lily texted. "He's on his way to the restaurant. Don't you dare cancel," Sophie sighed, changing into a simple blue dress before heading to Bellini's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown that felt too fancy for a blind date. The maitre d' led her to a table where a handsome man in his 30s sat studying the wine list. "Sophie," he asked, standing politely. "Yes, you must be Patrick." She extended her hand, which he shook firmly. The date was pleasant enough. Patrick worked in finance, had traveled extensively, and laughed at all the right moments. But Sophie felt no spark, her mind repeatedly wandering to her upcoming private tutoring sessions with Emma. As Patrick walked her to her car, he asked, "May I see you again?" Sophie hesitated. "I'm sorry, Patrick. You're very nice, but I don't think we're a good match." He took the rejection gracefully, and as Sophie drove home, she wondered why she felt so relieved. Tuesday arrived quickly. Sophie followed the GPS directions to the address Ryan had provided, driving farther into the countryside than she'd anticipated. When she turned onto a private road, she began to wonder if she'd made a mistake. The road wound through manicured grounds before revealing a stunning modern house mansion nestled into the hillside, with glass walls reflecting the sunset. "This can't be right," Sophie muttered, double-checking the address. But as she approached the circular driveway, she saw Emma waving enthusiastically from the front steps. "Miss Taylor, you found us." The girl bounced excitedly as Sophie parked her aging sedan next to a sleek black Range Rover. "Emma, is this really where you live?" Sophie asked, stepping out and staring up at the architectural masterpiece before her. "Yep, Dad designed it himself. He designs lots of buildings." Emma took her hand, pulling her toward the entrance. "Come see my study room. Dad set it up special for our tutoring." Ryan appeared in the doorway, dressed casually in jeans and a simple gray sweater that somehow looked expensive. Welcome, Sophie. I hope you found us without trouble. Your home is. Not what I expected, Sophie admitted, taking in the soaring ceilings and museum-quality art as she entered. A flicker of something embarrassment crossed Ryan's face. I should have mentioned I'm an architect. This place is a bit of an experiment in sustainable luxury design. Dad's being modest, Emma chimed in. He's super famous. His buildings are everywhere. Ryan gently steered the conversation away from himself. Emma's study room is ready. Perhaps you'd like to start while I finish preparing dinner. The study room turned out to be a bright, thoughtfully designed space with a round table, comfortable chairs, and walls lined with books. It was perfect for tutoring, as if designed by someone who had consulted educational experts, which Sophie suspected Ryan had. The session went smoothly, with Emma showing remarkable progress. When they finished, Ryan called them for dinner, served in a stunning kitchen with views of the forest beyond. "This is delicious," Sophie commented, savoring the pasta dish Ryan had prepared. "Did you make this yourself?" "Dad cooks everything," Emma announced proudly. "He says chefs can't make mac and cheese the way I like it." Ryan smiled affectionately at his daughter. "I've become quite proficient at the basics, though I admit pasta is about the extent of my culinary expertise." The evening passed comfortably, with Emma chattering about school and Ryan occasionally interjecting with quiet observations that revealed his dry wit. Sophie found herself relaxing, seeing beyond the reserved exterior to the thoughtful man beneath. As she prepared to leave, Ryan walked her to her car. "Thank you for coming." Emma was thrilled all day. "It was my pleasure," Sophie replied honestly. "Your home is beautiful and dinner was lovely." He hesitated, then asked, "Would you mind if I showed you something? It will only take a moment." Curious, Sophie followed him along a stone path that curved around the house to a secluded garden. In the center stood a small glass structure, a greenhouse filled with wildflowers. "This was Caroline's, my wife's project," Ryan explained softly. "I've maintained it since she passed. Emma helps me on weekends." Sophie was touched by the gesture of sharing something so personal. "It's beautiful. She must have loved it here." "She did." He looked at Sophie directly, his blue eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Emma said something interesting today. She said you remind her of Caroline, not in appearance, but in spirit. The way you encourage her to think differently about problems." Sophie wasn't sure how to respond. "That's very kind." "I apologize if that was inappropriate to share," Ryan said quickly. "I just wanted you to know how much your influence means to Emma, to both of us." The moment hung between them, charged with unspoken emotions. Then Ryan stepped back, professional once again. "I'll see you Thursday?" "Yes, Thursday," Sophie confirmed, driving away with her thoughts in turmoil. Over the next few weeks, the private tutoring sessions became the highlight of Sophie's schedule. Each visit revealed more about the Kensingtons' life. Ryan, she learned, wasn't just an architect. He was Ryan Kensington of Kensington Architectural Innovations, whose revolutionary sustainable designs had transformed skylines worldwide. His quiet demeanor wasn't aloofness but intense focus, and his devotion to Emma was unwavering. One Thursday evening, Sophie arrived to find Emma with a babysitter instead of Ryan. "Dad got stuck in a meeting in the city," Emma explained disappointedly. "But he said to tell you he's very sorry and he'll be back before you leave." The tutoring session went as planned, but Sophie missed Ryan's quiet presence. After Emma went to bed, Sophie gathered her things, leaving a note for Ryan about Emma's progress. As she walked to her car, headlights illuminated the driveway as Ryan's Range Rover pulled in. He stepped out, looking tired but smiling when he saw her. "I was afraid I'd missed you," he said, approaching. "I'm sorry about tonight. It's fine." Emma did great. She's really understanding fractions now. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of fatigue. "Would you mind staying a few minutes? I'd like to show you something." Intrigued, Sophie followed him into his home office, where architectural models and blueprints covered a large table. He pulled out a set of drawings and spread them before her. "I'm designing a new kind of learning center," he explained, his eyes lighting up with passion. A place that combines traditional classroom settings with innovative spaces for different learning styles. I'd value your professional opinion. Sophie was touched by his request. You want my opinion on architectural designs. I want your opinion as an educator who understands how students think, who understands how my daughter thinks. His gaze was intense, focused entirely on her. For the next hour, they discussed the plans, Sophie pointing out practical considerations from a teacher's perspective while Ryan made notes. Their conversation flowed easily, their minds connecting in unexpected ways. As the evening grew late, Ryan finally set down his pencil. Thank you. This has been invaluable. It was fascinating, Sophie admitted. I've never seen architecture from this angle before. Ryan hesitated, then said, would you consider being a consultant on this project, paid, of course? Your insights would be tremendously helpful. The offer was unexpected. I don't know anything about architectural consulting. You know about education, that's what matters, he paused. But perhaps that's too much to ask on top of your teaching and tutoring. Sophie thought about it. Actually, I'd love to, it sounds exciting. His smile was genuine, transforming his face. Excellent. We could meet for dinner next week to discuss details. Without Emma's constant interruptions about Minecraft, the invitation hung in the air between them, both knowing it crossed a line beyond professional collaboration. Sophie took a breath. I'd like that. The following week, Ryan picked Sophie up in his Range Rover, taking her to a small, exclusive restaurant nestled in the hills. The maitre d' greeted Ryan by name, leading them to a private table overlooking gardens illuminated by soft lights. I hope this isn't too much, Ryan said, noting Sophie's wide eyes. I thought we could use the privacy to discuss the project. But as the evening progressed, architectural plans remained untouched as they talked about everything else: their childhoods, dreams, and the paths that led them to where they were now. I never intended to become successful in the conventional sense, Ryan admitted, swirling his wine. I just wanted to design buildings that changed how people experienced spaces. The money followed. And yet you drive a modest car to school and never mentioned your company, Sophie observed. Ryan shrugged. After Caroline died, I learned quickly how wealth changes how people treat you and Emma. At school, I want her to be normal, not the billionaire's daughter. Billionaire, Sophie nearly choked on her wine. I thought maybe you were well off, but… Ryan looked embarrassed. I should have been more transparent. Does it change things? Sophie considered the question seriously. It explains the amazing house and private art collection. But no, it doesn't change who you are. Relief washed over his face. Good, because I've enjoyed these past weeks more than I can express. As Ryan drove her home, a comfortable silence filled the car. Outside her apartment building, he walked her to the door. May I call you tomorrow? He asked, his usual composure slightly shaken. Sophie smiled. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Their relationship evolved naturally after that night. Ryan began picking Sophie up after school twice a week, and they would go to his home together for Emma's tutoring. Weekends were spent exploring the countryside, visiting museums, or simply enjoying quiet moments in Ryan's garden. Emma, far from being surprised by this development, seemed delighted. I knew Dad liked you, she confided to Sophie one afternoon while Ryan prepared lunch. He smiles when he talks about you. He never used to smile before. After 2 months of dating, Ryan invited Sophie to accompany him to a charity gala where one of his buildings was being showcased. It would be their first public appearance together, and Sophie felt nervous about entering Ryan's world of wealth and influence. The evening of the gala, Ryan arrived at Sophie's apartment with a large box. I thought you might like this for tonight, he said somewhat awkwardly. No pressure to wear it, of course. Inside was a stunning emerald green gown that perfectly complemented Sophie's eyes. Ryan, it's beautiful, but I can't accept this. Consider it borrowed, he suggested, understanding her hesitation. The color reminded me of you. At the gala, Sophie felt initially overwhelmed by the opulence and the obvious recognition Ryan received. Photographers captured their entrance and whispers followed them through the crowd. "Mr. Kensington, is this your first public appearance with someone since your wife's passing?" a reporter called out. Ryan's arm tightened protectively around Sophie's waist. "This is Sophie Taylor, an extraordinary educator and my guest this evening. That's all I'll say on personal matters." Throughout the night, Sophie watched Ryan navigate the social complexities with quiet confidence, always keeping her by his side, introducing her to colleagues with genuine pride in his voice. "You've managed to crack the Kensington shell," one woman commented to Sophie during dinner. The architectural world has wondered for years what would bring Ryan back to the land of the living. Later, as they swayed together on the dance floor, Sophie asked, "Was tonight difficult for you?" Ryan considered the question. "Being in the spotlight is never comfortable for me. But having you here made it bearable." His hand tightened around hers. "Sophie, I need to tell you something." They stepped off the dance floor onto a quiet balcony overlooking the city lights. Ryan seemed suddenly nervous, reminding Sophie of their first real conversation months ago. "I haven't felt this way since Caroline," he began, his voice low. "For 3 years I focused entirely on Emma and work, convinced that part of my life was over. Then you walked into our lives with your infectious enthusiasm and genuine care for my daughter." Sophie's heart raced as he continued. "I found myself looking forward to parent-teacher meetings just to see you for those few minutes. I watched how you interacted with Emma, how you challenged her and built her confidence. And somewhere along the way, I realized I was studying more than just your teaching methods, I was studying you." He took her hands in his. "I know it's only been a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything. I'm falling in love with you, Sophie." The confession hung in the night air, vulnerable and honest. Sophie felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm falling in love with you too, Ryan. Both you and Emma." Their kiss was gentle, a promise of what could be. The following months brought changes both small and significant. Ryan began attending school functions openly with Sophie, no longer concerned about hiding their relationship. Sophie spent most weekends at the Kensington home, her apartment gradually becoming a place she merely visited to collect mail. One Sunday morning, 6 months after they began dating, Sophie awoke to find Emma standing beside the bed, holding a breakfast tray with Ryan behind her. "We made breakfast," Emma announced proudly, placing the tray complete with slightly burnt toast and fresh fruit on Sophie's lap. "This is lovely," Sophie smiled, noticing how nervous they both looked. "Is everything okay?" Emma glanced at her father, who nodded encouragingly. "We have a question," Emma said solemnly, pulling a small velvet box from her pocket. "Well, Dad has a question, but it's from both of us." Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, taking the box from his daughter. "This isn't how I planned it," he admitted, but Emma was too excited to wait for the picnic I'd arranged. He opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald ring surrounded by diamonds. "Sophie Taylor, you've brought light back into our home and our hearts. Would you do us the extraordinary honor of becoming part of our family officially?" Emma bounced on her toes. "Say yes, please say yes." Tears filled Sophie's eyes as she looked between them, the quiet, thoughtful man who had slowly revealed his heart to her, and the bright, loving girl who had first brought them together. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to both of you." Their wedding the following spring was intimate, held in Ryan's wildflower greenhouse with Emma as the maid of honor. Lily, who took full credit for Sophie's happiness despite the failed blind date she'd arranged, served as bridesmaid. As they exchanged vows surrounded by blooming flowers, Sophie reflected on the unexpected journey that had led her here from after-school tutoring to finding a family who cherished her exactly as she was. Ryan, no longer the quiet, reserved father who barely spoke during parent-teacher meetings, looked at her with unguarded love as he promised to build a life with her as carefully and thoughtfully as he built his architectural masterpieces. The reception was held on the grounds of their home, soon to be Sophie's home too. As the evening wound down, Ryan led Sophie to a secluded spot overlooking the valley. "I have something to show you," he said, unrolling a set of architectural plans. "A wedding present of sorts." The drawings showed a beautiful building with innovative classrooms, outdoor learning spaces, and a central garden reminiscent of Caroline's greenhouse. "The Sophie Taylor Learning Center," Ryan explained. "Built on the principles we developed together. A place where all kinds of learners can thrive." He paused, suddenly uncertain. "I've purchased land near Westfield. If you're interested, the board position of educational director would be yours." Sophie stared at the plans, overwhelmed. "You're building this for real?" "For real," Ryan confirmed, "but only if you want it. Your teaching position at Westfield is important to you, and I would never ask you to give it up." Sophie traced the outlines of classrooms designed exactly as she had described in their late-night conversations. "I wouldn't be giving anything up. I'd be gaining an opportunity to help more children learn the way Emma does, by exploring, questioning, discovering." Ryan's smile was radiant. "So you like it?" Sophie wrapped her arms around his neck. "I love it almost as much as I love you." As they returned to their wedding celebration, Emma ran up to them. "Are you going to tell her about the house too, Dad?" Ryan gave his daughter a mock stern look. "I was saving that for tomorrow." "What house?" Sophie asked, looking between them. Emma grinned. "The one Dad's building for the kids we're going to adopt. I told him I want at least 2 little brothers." Sophie raised an eyebrow at Ryan, who shrugged helplessly. "She has very specific plans for our future." "Well," Sophie said, taking both their hands, "as it happens, I think her plans sound perfect." As the stars appeared above them, Sophie reflected on how one after-school tutoring program had led her to this moment, standing hand in hand with the quiet father who had been studying her heart all along, and the wonderful girl who had brought them together. It wasn't the life she had imagined for herself, but it was infinitely better than anything she could have dreamed.